One thing I started just, get into my usual deep thought and just thinking is just how much money really controls our lives in the sense that, whatever you own or whatever you have, in a sense, it dictates how you move in life and how you may treat other people or how you look to other people, how you adapt to other people. That's one thing I just kind of realized with just moving up in this game that we're playing, this industrial simulator where you have to work a job every day and you have to go to work, you got to pay your bills, you got to have your car note, you got to pay for food, rent, whatever. But as someone that went from having nothing to, gradually just having a little bit more responsibilities and things that I need to take care of as I go. I just be thinking about this on pretty much a daily basis, just how much it dictates my life now. There's things that I have to think about and consider that I didn't before when I didn't have these responsibilities and I didn't have these, I don't want to say issues, but I didn't have these conscious thoughts in the back of my head, And I remember when I didn't have certain things, just how I had to move differently in life. And bro, the human brain is just so complex, and it's just funny how you can go from a survival mentality when you don't have certain things and you have to adapt and you have to survive. You have to change with the current, to get those things what you need. And I just remember sometimes where I would have to ask people for rides, or even something as simple as living with my parents, because I don't have nowhere else to stay. You got to kind of submit to their rules, submit to their uh, you almost have to adapt and adhere to their personality, because when you're in that car with somebody else and they subconsciously know that, okay, this person basically needs me, this person is depending on me to get them from point A to B, or this person is depending on me to put a plate of food on their table. It's two completely different things that are going into the minds of those individuals, the receiver and the giver. And one thing I definitely notice is when you go around just trying to leech off of everybody, or you keep, like, when you're constantly asking for help or asking for this, the person on the other end is just slowly gonna lose respect for you over time. And that's something that's really important to me now, I would say, because I had to sit there and basically just get walked all over on for so long, just in my adolescence. And after a few years, you just get tired of that shit, bro. Like, I don't want to ask nobody for help, especially as a grown ass man, young ass man. You just don't want to keep asking niggas for help, bro. Like, that shit just gets annoying after a while. And one thing that I can say, from my personal experience, is my family always made it feel like a burden to ask for help too. So I mean, yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but at the end of the day, it kind of just mentally reconstructed my brain to be like, all right, I'm gonna just do this on my own, bro. Because that's the one thing about just asking people for help in general. And one thing I noticed too is when people do stuff for you like that, it's almost back to the thought of what I said before. They subconsciously expect you to adhere and adapt to whatever rules that they have going on, or just adhere to their personality. And it's not really, it's more subtle than it sounds. it's not, it's never as explicit as, okay, I'm gonna do this for you, so I expect you to do this. It's never explicit. Like whenever people do things for you like that, especially this is especially the instances where people know that you might not have another option, because as I said before, subconsciously in their brain they take note of that. They take note of that and they just think they could treat you any type of way. You know, it's kind of like the saying where people say you give somebody an inch and they take a mile. It's true, bro, because I've had to experience this shit firsthand. And just because you might not have a car, you might not have certain things that you need help, because honestly, there's nothing really wrong with asking for help every now and then. And I even had to learn that too, just coming from where I came from. But you know, as long as you're working on something so you get to that point where you don't need that help anymore, I would say it's fine. And you know, that's more or less what I had to do. But even still, back then, you know, the little subtle things that you just have to conform to. You know, it's almost like when someone, the best way I think I can put it is when you're in someone else's car, you're in someone else's space. You know, you're in the energy of somebody else. So autonomously, you kind of just shift to their vibe. You know, you're listening, they're playing music most of the time, you know, you're listening to what they listen to. It's little stuff like that. It sounds like it doesn't really matter, but it really does, because it's all just energy. You know, we as humans, we have energy, we have different vibes, we have different characteristics. And I always say this in pretty much all of my videos, like you become the people that you're around. So it's different when you're always just hanging around someone, even if you're just asking for a simple task, bro. Like, can you just give me a ride, or can I get some of this? Can, you know, just asking somebody for something simple. But it affects the person that you're meant to become more than you think, because you're constantly around that person. And you know, as humans, we all have our own conscious thoughts, ideals, beliefs, and viewpoints on the world. So it just affects you.